Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be discussing the last several chapters of Dragons of Autumn Twilight. So we have finally finished our first book on the channel. Sorry it took so long to do so. Hopefully the next books will not take quite so long for us to be able to complete. I guess when I started this channel, a lot was kind of happening after the first couple of weeks, so we kind of got way off base with our being able to meet up and have these videos. So hopefully we're going to get back on track and we'll be able to complete the next ones in a much quicker rate. I hope you really enjoyed the book. I always enjoy this book and have once again rediscovered my love for it, as I always seem to do. So hopefully that you enjoyed it as much as I do. And then we're going to be discussing after this Dragons of Winter Night, which is the second book in the Dragonlance Chronicles. So hopefully you'll enjoy this one just as much and we can have some great discussions on this one as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into our customary recap of the chapters. We've got Fizbin and Tass falling from that chain and everything like that, and so Fizbin dies in the feather fall that he creates. He does not protect him, it just protects Tass, and he is crunched onto the floor. Unfortunately, that's sad, because I really like Fizbin. Let me know if you guys were as sad about Fizbin dying as I am, because, like I said, I love Fizbin. You've known this since he came into this book. I was anticipating him. So let me know how you feel about Fizbin. Though at least Tass is good. Tass is also a great character, so... Alright, so then Eben is revealed to be the traitor, and he finds the Green Gemstone Man, or Barum, as we find out his name is, and tries to escape with him from the mines before anybody notices. Unfortunately, he is noticed, and double unfortunately, because of Tass and Fizbin being chased by Pyros, the chain mechanism goes, and it creates those boulders that goes and falls on both of them, and they are both instantly crushed under the boulders. And then we've got the Dark Queen abandons her cleric Verminiard mid-fight. So even though he was winning, she ends up abandoning him, and they are able to defeat him because of her abandoning him. And he is killed. And Madafleur ends up getting the best of Pyros and kills him along with herself. So all of both the dragons and the main lord of the area is completely destroyed, and the battle or the rescue is is good and turns out well, and they were able to escape into the mountains. And then Riverwind and Goldmoon get married in the little epilogue section. So the only thing I really want to discuss today on the actual chapters that we have read is going to be the fact that Eben is mentioned so late in the novel, and that we get a glimpse of him so late in the novel, and yet he is still such a mystery, and there is no way to get answers for who Eben is and why he's in this story to begin with. So it's kind of like the question of why would they put somebody in so late and not be able to do anything with this character, especially with, well, originally we thought that he had died the instant he was in the story with the boulders coming on him, but we do see a glimpse of him, or at least what the Tanis and Strum believe was him at the wedding. So we're not totally sure whether he's dead or alive at this point. So why put him in so late? This is because we've got something now to look forward to in the next book. So we've gone so far, we've kind of have not really an ending, but like kind of a wrapping up. We've got the wedding and everything like that, and it's a stopping point. We're at this stopping point. So the book's over. What reason do we have to read the next one? Well, we've got Barum. Barum is something that's going to make a huge intrigue factor. We've given the readers something to be intrigued about, something that we want to know about still. We've got another question, just like we talked about before when we talk about what gives us to reading, and like between the sections of book 1 and book 2 in the one book, and just in general with the events, what questions are we continuing to be given in order for us to want to know the answer and to be intrigued to keep reading? So sure, we have some other ones, but especially Baraam is put in here with the mystery because, one, the story doesn't end, so we still have time to continue Baraam's story and to relate what Baraam is and what the whole deal is, because we've got a book 2. So we can put it in later because we know that there's going to be time in the next book to discuss him. But also, specifically putting him in at the end here makes it so we're like, wait, what's happening? Who is this? Is he still alive? And we are now intrigued to get to the next one faster. There's something that is holding our interest at the very, very end. Suddenly a new question comes up and we're like, wait, we need to keep reading. We need to see what's happening. What's going on? Who is this? So we present a fresh question that is enough of a intriguing factor for us to get to the next book. And the authors want you to want to get to their next book, and so that's why they've given us this little piece of Baraam right at the end, and have so many questions about him. Not only was he supposed to have died, and then you're just like, well, why was he in there and then died, until you find out in the wedding that he might not be so dead, and then you want to know, well, how would he have survived that? Just like Tanis and Strum are like, how is it possible that he would be at the wedding? As well as, why is he called the Green Gemstone Man? Why did Verminiard and Pyros want him? Why? Who? We have tons of questions about who he is, why he's in here, what's going on with him. And it makes it so we want to get to the next book and to keep reading and to be invested in this story. So, that's the only thing that I thought was really important to bring up in this last little chapter, is discussing that ending with Baraam in the ending. Okay, so now I want to go and have us review the book on a bigger scale, or bigger questions, just like we started with the bigger questions with like point of view and how character development was going and how the world was being developed and all these other questions and concerns and things that we wanted to think about. Now that we're at the end, we can go back and look at the book as a whole and be like, okay, how did the book do? And what have we now gone from point A to point B at the end here, and how do we feel about everything? So the first thing I want to discuss that's a big question is how this book ends, and what kind of ending is it? I've got a couple of things on this. So the book finishes with the battle with Verminiard, then ends with a happy celebration of Gold Moon and Riverwind's wedding. So that's basically what I'm considering the ending. The part about the battle being defeated and the little epilogue that we've got here. That's what I consider as the ending we're discussing at this point. So does this feel like an ending? That's the main question. Is this really an end, and where we feel like, yep, the book is over? As well as, is the story over? Is this a good place to stop? Is this like a good place that we feel like we have accomplished from point A to point B, and is this thing's kind of wrapping up? And I like to say that in a way, no. This story, for my answer on the ending for myself personally, and hopefully that you'll see what I'm getting at in a minute, is no, it is not an ending. This is merely a stopping point between book 1 and book 2. So this is just a place that they are putting a pin in the story and being like, this is a place that we can take a breath, we can take a stop, we can wrap some things up that we had going for us, but it is not an ending. The story is not over. The war is not over. This battle kind of is over, considering they did win and they were able to defeat the people who were attacking them, and they were able to escape to the mountains, but it doesn't really feel like anything has been resolved. No problems have been resolved. No, the discs haven't been given to anybody. There's not like a overarching plot that we can say, oh, this plot from here to here is done. We've wrapped it up. We've got it together. We're stopping. And we finished something. I don't feel that way personally. Maybe you feel differently. And if so, I'd love to hear it in the comments below and have a conversation about it. But at this point, I cannot say that we've gotten from point A to point B and that has wrapped up a storyline. That has wrapped up a big event or a certain section of something to be done. It feels like we aren't done at the end of this story right here. We feel like we're waiting for the rest of the story. We're waiting to continue the war. We're waiting to see what happens next. It's not really feel like we're wrapping anything up per se, other than that we are done with the bit of battling that we had, and we will be continuing forward from this point. It is more of a breath, a stopping place that we can put a pin in the story and end until the next book comes out. So this distinction will probably be a bit easier to see once we read other books that do have an overarching plot in the one book and have a specific ending for this book, and then we read the next book. Things like that. But at this point, it's for this story, we've got the 3 books is like one story. We got the whole storyline right here, and then we've chopped them in breaking points to make the books to what they are, so they're in sizable chunks. But it's not like this book one, we've got, okay, we're trying to get from here to here, and we did it in this one book. So we didn't complete this whole war in one book. We didn't even have something that was mainly supposed to happen in this particular book. We kind of were just following along as they were going through and figuring out, okay, we got to go here next. Okay, we got to do this next. Okay, for this we got captured, and so that we ended up going here. So we're just mostly following them along. We don't have a goal in mind, other than that we know that something's going to be happening with this Queen of Darkness and this overall war of evil and good that are fighting right now. That's the only things that we really know. So we can tell that the story is not done, that there was nothing that was really completed in this story. They're just going on this adventure, and they're still continuing on. Ooh, pardon me. Thank you. Ooh. Okay, so once we read other books that have plots that, even though they're in a series, that was one main plot for a particular book, we will be able to discuss the differences and be able to see it a bit clearer. But at this point, I just wanted to make it clear that this is the kind of ending is one where we're having the whole story here, and we've just broken up a bit and have ended it for now, but it is not really a clear ending. The other thing about the ending I want to discuss is the fact that we're ending here with this wedding, and we've got this happiness and this hopefulness along with the despair and emptiness and fear that we have at the end of this this epilogue that we've got. We've got both of these sides coming to it. And I want to discuss why the authors did this. It's important because with an ending, you really have to, especially with this, where it's an ending but not an ending, where we really have to set up this is the ending, this is where we're wrapping it up for the moment, this is what we have completed so far, and kind of reviewing that and kind of saying like, okay, we got to the point where we could reach this point in the story, but we also have to set up the place where we're going to go. For readers and for writers both, this is important because we have to see as a reader, this is where the whole point of reading the story has gotten us to. And because we're not done with the story, we have to know that we have made progress through this story. We have gotten somewhere. We have done something by reading this story, that the story is just not leading us in circles, or that we're not getting anywhere, or the characters haven't done anything. We have made it to a point where we've gotten all the way through here, and now we're like, hey, we can see something move forward, and we can see the happiness that this world is going to have, and like have these moments of we could not have gotten here in the beginning, but now we've gotten here. So we've made the progress, and we have some hope and happiness and a future that we are going to be looking for. But because the story is not over, and because we know that it's an overarching battle and a war, and a lot of terrible things are still to come, we then set it up. So that way the reader will then still be interested in reading more. Be like, okay, this is great, but this is just a breath. This is just a stopping point. Now here is where we're going to be going, and here is the danger that lies ahead, and here is still the questions that we need answered. So it's really not over. We're wrapping it up and trying to set it up for the new things. It's doing two purposes. It's got to be like, okay, we're having this breath, we're stopping, we're going to wind it down, we're going to get to this point, we're going to give you some hope because we know that you want hope for this future, because otherwise, what? The point is the reading. If you do, unless I guess you want the evil to win, and maybe you do. But we have to give something to where we've gotten to, and here is the hope that we had that we can get somewhere new. And because we're trying to get somewhere new, here is also the setup for what's to come and how are we going to deal with it, or what is the plan, or what are we looking at, or anything else. So we've got the wrapping up and the happiness from Riverwind and Goldmoon's wedding, and them eating and them celebrating and having a good time together. And everyone has been saved, so they're celebrating with a whole bunch of people. And then we've got the little side conversation with Tanis and Raslin that's like, okay, but just remember that we're still not done. We're still in the middle of a war. We're still going to be continuing on, and you still need to read the next book to find out what's going to happen. All right. Next thing to discuss is story progression. So my first question for you, and I'd love it if you would comment down below, is how did you like the story progression of this book? And story progression I mean by plot and the elements that have come into from getting to point A to point B, understandability, and the adventure. All of it kind of together. How have we gotten from point A to point B? How did the authors get us from point A to point B? Where did you go? How did you like it? What was it easy? Was it hard? Did you get how we got from point A to point B? All that kind of stuff is the progression of how the book went. So how do you like the progression of this story? Was it easy for you to follow? Did you enjoy it? Did you like the way that the authors took you on this journey? Yeah, so just discuss it. And even in a way, it's kind of like saying, did you like this book? It's kind of a broader question of it. Did you like it? Was it fun to read? That kind of stuff. So go ahead and let me know what you've thought of this book in general down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. But then to actually discuss about the story progression and the way the authors have done everything in the book was it smooth, steady, and understandable? Now this question you might be thinking, like, why are we discussing this? And I think it's important to discuss how a book went overall, because it's, if you can't get through the progression of a story, if it's too confusing, if it's not smooth enough, it's not steady enough, we're not getting anywhere in a way that that is quick, but also not quick enough, that you're going to lose interest in reading it, that you're not going to be able to enjoy reading it because you're too busy trying to figure out everything. So story progression is kind of the base of the book, along with plot, because plot is basically story progression. But it's the way that the plot is presented. And some books are really great at story progression, some are not so good. Some have longer story progressions, they take a lot longer to get anywhere, and can still be good, but they take a lot more effort to get through. Things like that. Like for me, the Sword of Truth books by Terry Goodkind are amazing books, and I love them, but they are a lot longer to get anywhere. They are, they do take more time and more effort to plunge through the book. So despite it being really good, the story progression is slow and grueling a bit. Despite it being understandable and really good, it is something that wears me out and I have to take breaks from it. So this story, for me personally, is a perfect blend of smooth, steady, and understandable. We get somewhere without me taking 5, 6, 7 chapters to get anywhere. We pretty much get places fairly quickly. Part of that is having shorter chapters, but part of it is also just that we progress and have plots and have things and places that we're going when we're reading the story. It's smooth in the fact that it's easy to follow from one plot to the next thing. We see where we're going as we're going there. It's not like we're like, oh, we're going this way, and then now we're going this way, and oh, we're going back this way, oh, and then we're turning and twisting and turning and twisting, and just everything's everywhere. It's really smooth. You know where you're going. It's kind of like an arrow. We're like, okay, this is where we're at. This is where we're going. Okay, we've got there. Now this is where we're going. Okay, so for me, it's both steady in the fact that we get somewhere without it taking too long. It's smooth because we know where we're going, and it's understandable because I get why we're going there. I get why we are at this place. They've discovered these things, and we've gathered this data, and it's like, okay, so this is where it's pointing us, and this is why we're going to this place, and this is what we're hoping to accomplish once we get to that place. So as we go through the plot, I get why we went there. There are some books and some stories just in general where it's very hard to understand why we're going the places that we're going, or why the people are doing what they're doing, or anything else. So to me, Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman in this book do a really, really good job of making the plot great and the progression great, in the fact that we get somewhere, we know where we're going, and we get why we're going there. It's a really good blend of all three qualities, at least in my opinion. If you have a different opinion, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to know why you do or do not like certain points of the plot. Especially because for me, since I enjoy it so well, it would be really interesting to hear another opinion. But yeah, so just to reiterate a little bit more on why that is so important, is because it's the foundation of our story. Without any kind of progression or any kind of plot, we wouldn't have a story. So it is really important on how the authors implement the story and the plot in order for us to get where they want to lead us. Alright, so the next discussion I want to have is character progression. Because along with the plot of us wanting to get from one point to the next point, you kind of want your characters to get from one point to the next point as well. You want to see how they progress and they change because life and experiences change characters. So I want to go ahead and put kind of in two categories of who we think, or at least for this video, what I think on who has changed and who hasn't changed so far in the book, throughout this book. And you can go ahead and see if you feel the same or not. And a little bit on how they changed, just so we can kind of see where we've gotten from point A to point B with the characters. So I don't see tons and tons of people, of characters in this book have done really significant change that you can really plot and be like, oh, they were like this and now they're like this. Or this is what happened and this changed them and then they've kind of evolved into this. So I really saw changes, or maybe more like that we knew a lot more about them. So change plus we know a lot, so it changes our perception of them, because I feel like that's also a progression, is having one opinion about a character and then coming out with a new opinion on a character. That is also progression in our own experience of the character. Is now a progression, is that we've gotten from point A to point B with a character. Even though that character was always that to begin with, we finally now are able to comprehend it and see it and acknowledge it. So I saw 4 characters that really I felt like showed progression. First one kind of is linked together, Gold Moon and Riverwind. And their progression has really been in trusting the companions, becoming a part of the group, and being reliable members of the group, if that makes sense. So at first they're kind of the outsiders. They're kind of stuck in their own ways. They're kind of stuck in their own characteristics of the tribe that they lived in as well. But as you see at the end, especially with this wedding, but even throughout a little bit, where Riverwind now views Tanis as a brother, despite him originally hating and having a prejudice against elves and dwarves and other people, but he calls Tanis his brother and is considers him so trustworthy and a great leader. So there's that part where they've changed, where they become a part of this group. They've really come to love these people and to be trusted and to trust them. As well as, like in the wedding here, they've abandoned their tribe. The part in the middle where Gold Moon and Riverwind were having problems is because after their tribe died, he saw her as the chief, and he's having a really hard time accepting that she should be the chief, and all the responsibility that is to be with someone like that, and how he feels like he's not worthy of her because he is not part of the tribe's upper class or whatever. And then they have this wedding where they really see that, hey, we're letting go of our tribe. The tribe is gone. We're with these people now. And we don't want to just do the traditions of our tribe. We want to make our own future, our own characteristics, our own beliefs, things like that. So they've really transformed from being strict, part of the Kishu tribe, strict on their roles, strict on everything they think and believe, and they've grown to trust these people and to change their views and to then be like, hey, our tribe is gone. We don't have to worry about them. We're doing what we want to do. And we're going to do the things that will make us happy with the people that we're with, our new friends, our new family that we have created with the people and our companions here. So I feel like those two characters in general, especially because they've come in right from the beginning all the way to the end, unlike some other characters that we have, make the biggest change. At least in this book, which we'll get to that later. The third person that I felt like made a change, and she's not in it that much, so I feel like it was important to make a comment on it in the fact that changing over a short amount of time is even more amazing than making a change over a big period of time, is Laurana. It's not a huge change yet, but she has definitely made a little bit of a change. And even Tanis mentions that she has changed since she first followed after them, wanting to chase after Tanis. She has grown up a bit, and even mentions how she does her first kill, and how that inside her has kind of taken root, and she doesn't want to be a coward anymore. She wants to be brave and to be an asset to the group that she has followed after. So we see that even in the short period of time of knowing her, it's like the last third of the book, maybe, she has already changed. She has already made a impression from when we first saw her to now, where she's at. And the last one is Fizbin, which he has been in barely more than Laurana. But he is the person that I think has made a progression in the fact that he hasn't changed, more that our perception of him has changed. From the beginning, we meet him as a old wizard who is arguing with a tree moving in front of his son, and being a nutso wacko dude that can't remember what his fireball spell is, to someone who we don't know who he is, how powerful he is, what he really wants, what he's doing, when we show that he is competent. He knows a lot of things that we're not sure how he knows, and he shows Tass this painting of good dragons fighting evil dragons, and then makes him forget it and tells him, oh, but when the time is right, you'll remember. So our perception of who he is has definitely changed. We've got point 1 here to point B here, and it's the same person, but our view and our knowledge of him has progressed and changed, and has made us now have a deeper or different understanding of the character, which is really, really important. in progressing a character. Unfortunately, it seems like that character no longer matters, so we won't really see much more of him, at least from what we know at this point. And I need to stop talking on this subject because as knowing things or not knowing things, it's kind of hard not to give things away that I think, if you haven't read it, I don't want to give away. So we're just going to put that away for now. But we did see a progression between Fizban from when we first saw him to when we last saw him before his death. On our perception of him has now changed, and he has made progress in our minds. So then the people who haven't had change is that I obviously it's the rest of the characters that haven't had change, but we're just gonna go over them because I feel like a lot of these people have not changed for different reasons. So for Tass, Strum, Caramon, Flint, and Tika, and kind of Delphinus, we don't really see progression in their character because we haven't really seen much of their character at this point. I feel like we haven't really focused on any of those characters in depth enough for them to have changed all that much. Tass, I would say, is the closest one to having changed a little bit in the fact that at the end we do see a different side of him being the one kind of in charge of Fizban and himself and being like, okay, what are we going to do? What is the point? Like, what if I can't do these big things, I'm going to do these little things. So we did see a little bit of him changing and him growing, but it wasn't really enough, I felt like, to focus on that he made a significant change. We don't focus on him for most of the book. We see him bits and pieces. And that's the same way I feel about Caramon. We see him bits and pieces when he's helping his brother and wanting food. We see Flint when he was talking about the gully dwarves, but we haven't really focused on him in any other way at this point. Strum, we know a little bit about the knights, but we haven't really focused on him as a character, other than bits and pieces where he's disagreeing with Tanis, despite following him anyway. Tika was only in it but at the beginning as the barmaid, and then it comes in at the middle, but we really don't focus on her either. She's along with the group, but we know that she's got a thing for Caramon, and Caramon's kind of got a thing for her, but we don't really have much from her point of view or much that she has done at this point. So these characters we don't really spend a lot of time with, and so I haven't really seen anything that I thought really made a progression from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, or from wherever they came in to the end. Same thing with Delphinus. He was another one I wanted to mention. Because he comes in, yes, about the same time as Laurana, and we do have the whole thing about distrusting him and all this other stuff, but we don't really know enough about Delphinus to say that, hey, like, he was one way and now he's another way. Or anything like that. It was mostly just a lot of distrust on the companion's part for him, and him not really giving us a reason to believe that he was at the end. Like, we don't really feel like, oh man, he actually was a traitor or anything like that. Now he's back to good. So yeah, so there's not really much on his portion. So the Raslin and Tanis, I want to say Tanis was a bit harder for me to decide. I wasn't really totally sure how I felt about him, whether he changed or not. Especially because we see a lot of Tanis, and we've seen quite a bit of Raslin. Those are the two that I put in the not significant change category that we have seen quite a bit of, and that has been focused on more than the others. Raslin, I'm sure at this point, for me, in my opinion, I did not feel like he has really progressed much. We do learn more about him, but my view of him has not really changed. He's still the distrustworthy, the greedy, the self-interested wizard who dislikes everybody, and you're kind of still wondering why he's with this group if he hates everybody, or why the group wanted him to begin with. I guess other than Caramon. Caramon probably would be like, he's going to be with us whether you like it or not. But at the same time, it's like, why? I still have the same questions I had at the beginning about Razlan now at the end. I don't really see him having a great change or something that happened that made him act differently now or anything else like that. So we do see a lot of him, but we haven't really gotten anywhere, in my opinion, from a point A to a point B. I still feel like we're still in point A for him. And then Tanis, we've seen a lot, especially because a lot of times he is the point of view that we are looking from, and he's the leader and makes all the decisions and things like that. And at this point, I haven't really seen a huge change in him either. It was a lot harder because I kept thinking like, well, maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe it's because it was gradual. I tried to think really hard, like, okay, well, where did we start off with? How are we ending? And so far, I still really don't feel like we've made a change. He is still the same leader, the same person that makes the hard decisions, the person who still trusts Razlan's judgment, despite everyone other than Caramon wondering why he does that. He is a very strong fast. He still is confused well, I guess not really confused, but he still is stuck between two women. There's a point where he does mention that he had seen a change in Lorana and how it kind of affected him, but I don't really see that he is a different person in any way or has different views on anything or has made significant change. Maybe you have a disagreement on that. Let me know down below. I'd be happy to hear it because he was really a tough one to place. I wasn't really sure. But despite seeing a lot of him and a lot of his inner workings of his mind and a lot of his opinions and things like that, I don't feel like at this point we have gotten from a point A to a point B with him. Now, I feel like this is important to discuss, like I said, because we do want to see a point A to a point B. Just like we want to get somewhere with the plot, we want to get somewhere with characters. We want to see how these conditions and these problems and these battles and everything else that they go through, these experiences, change them. Especially because in our own lives, as regular human beings, everyone is affected by their experience and they are changed as time goes on, as they meet new people, as they've done new things, as they come to like different things. It becomes a change for a person, and a person changes either gradually or quickly or whatever else. So it's interesting to see how these characters change and how those changes help them progress through the story afterward. So that's why I really wanted to focus on it and discuss it a bit before we moved on to the next book, to see if we've got more changes in the next book for different characters or same characters. I also wanted to talk about the difference between a book like this and that is spanning 3 different books for the story and books that would have more individualized plots. Because we have a story that is arcing over 3 books, change is going to be slower. Because changes over the story is what the goal really is. But because we have the story arcing over a much larger period, a much bigger amount of books, the change can be longer, can go longer, can be farther down the path than a book that has one book or a plot that needs to have change happen within this one book. So because we have these 3 whole stories, though we haven't seen changes in some of the characters from this story yet, books 2 might change them and books 3 might change them, and will definitely change them because that's what we're trying to get to, is see where they're going. And the characters that have already changed could change even more. Not necessarily, but they might. So it can happen at different rates, especially with it being such a longer storyline, with it being more complex. It allows the change to take place over a longer period of time, and so what we do not see in this story, we have to keep an eye out for the next book. So even though we've already seen changes from Riverwind, Goldmoon, Lorana, and Fizbin, if in the next book when we see them again, it will be more change or not. Or maybe the change that they have done and gotten through will change other characters. And as we move on to book 2, we will be looking out for Tass, Razlan, Delphinus, Strum, Caramon, Tanis, and Tika, and Flint's change. And we will see, okay, how are they moving on when will their change be? And we'll see the events that then work on them and get them to see the world differently and get them to be able to get somewhere. So let's go ahead and keep everybody in mind in the next book. We'll go ahead and continue to talk about the relationships and the things that are happening with their characters on then, and see what kind of person they are and will become, and what importances those changes have to the storyline and to their adventures, and how that's going to help them as a whole. All right, so now I really wanted to discuss a bit about our expectations for the next book. So I've kind of figured that we've kind of wrapped up our discussions of the main things of an overarching book. So now let's go ahead and move on to what do we expect from the next book. And I'm not really going to go super in depth on this. It's going to be more of a list that I've created. Go ahead and let me know any of your expectations if I don't list it. And just saying how we're going to, what we're going to look out for the next book, and what kind of questions and intriguing things that they have done in book 1 to get us to book 2. And then we're going to see in book 2 if some of these things that we were expecting and wanting to have will come to pass. Okay, sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze again. So I just wanted to kind of list out so that way when we start the next book, we already have in our minds our expectations in place for coming into the next book, and kind of a mutual agreement on like, hey, where are we at? What have we established that was not answered in book 1? So that way we can keep an eye out for it in book 2. So I've got several things. Answers for the Green Gemstone Man, also known as Burham. So we kind of, like I said when we talked about earlier in this episode, is that we've got him in at this ending here, and it's really mysterious, and it doesn't look like he's dead. So we were going to try and see what happens with him in the next book. We would like to have answers about the gods. We've kind of mentioned the Queen of Darkness and Paladine, but we don't really know much. We know that the constellations of those two people are missing, but we don't really know much about the gods and how they work in this world. So for me, I was thinking that we're going to learn more about that and them. Answers about the good dragons. We're going to, in my expectation, is to see how the stuff with Tass and Fizbin, that painting and him remembering about the good dragons, how that's going to come into play in the future. Answers about Fizbin, because I know that he's dead, but we did see these glimpses of him as not a crazy wizard that makes no sense and tries to fling fireballs around. I kind of want to see if there's any answers that, despite him not being present anymore as a character, if we're going to get any answers about who he is and why he was there in the first place. Then obviously I'm going to expect some more character progression, like we were just talking about, wanting to see what characters go from here to there, as well as more world building. We're going to see more of the world. We're going to see more places. We're going to see more people. We're going to know things about more things about this world, and what kind of things come into play as we continue our story, as well as continued clarity of what is happening with the war and how the enemy can be defeated. So we're going to keep progressing with basically the plot, and going to be continuing with this war and seeing where it goes. More information on the enemy, more information on the Queen of Darkness, more information on how they are going to bring down this enemy, how they are going to win. So that's the expectations I have for this next book. Let me know if you have any more down below, like I said before. And then just really quick before we end this video and this class for this week, I kind of want to compare the covers. I thought that might be fun to see what we see and how that kind of affected the book that we just read, see what we see for that, and as well as maybe we can see what we might see in the future from the covers. So here's the cover of the first one. We've sorry, mind blank on what I was trying to say. We've seen this obviously many times, especially on my channel with me taking pictures with it to remind us what book we're reading. But we never really talked about who's on the cover. Now, I really love this artist. I don't know. Stawicki? I'm not sure who the artist is other than the little signature down here. But this artist really makes it seem like it's real life, even though you can tell it's drawn. It's kind of almost like it could be real. I really, really, really love the art on this book. Give me just one sec. Sorry about that. So I really, really love the art on all of them, and this is the same artist for all three covers. So if you look really closely, it looks real even though it's not. And I always find that really fascinating, that you can make a picture look so realistic that it could be a photograph even though you know it's not. But my guess for who's on the cover here is we've got Flint, Tanis, and Goldmoon. I believe, obviously Flint because he's the dwarf, and Goldmoon because she's got the staff here and she's got the typical golden silver hair. And then Tanis, I believe, was the person in the middle because he kind of has the elvish qualities in like the bow and the long hair and the green cloak, but he's got the beard, which was mentioned many times in the book. And I don't know of any of the other characters other than Flint that specifically mentions having a beard. Maybe Strum, but that's obviously not Strum because he doesn't have the armor. So it is a lot from Tanis' point of view, so I can see why Tanis would be on the cover here. Goldmoon, obviously, because the first 2/3 of the book was about getting figuring out stuff about her staff and getting the discs of Mishakal and all that. Flint wasn't too much in this book, I feel like, in the fact of him being significant, other than the beginning and not him wanting to get on the boat. But he hasn't really, and his knowledge, obviously, of the gully dwarves and things like that, his hatred of them. But I don't feel like he was overly focused on, so it's interesting that they chose Flint as well to do this, but I think that it's a nice compilation, the fact that you've got you've got Flint here being short in the front, Tanis, who's kind of the middle person here, and then Goldmoon is slightly lower down in the back. So maybe they just decided to put him in because he starts off the book, or maybe because of the compilation. I'm not sure, but it's definitely looks very autumn-like, and it looks like it's in Solus with the trees, the buildings and the trees in the background, because this whole tree is up there. So, and we visit Solus twice, so I can see how the cover shows symbolically of this book. A lot of the main things that are reoccurring are in this cover, and it represents the title for it being Autumn Twilight. So it looks like autumn, and we've kind of got the twilight lighting going on and everything. So there's that for this cover. So let's see if we can see any guesses that we have about the cover for this book, the second book. And at the end, we can go ahead and compare this one to what actually happened, as well as the next book when we start it, and compare it to what we have for those expectations. So let's go ahead and look at this cover. So again, going off of the title with it being Winter Night, we have that kind of theme going on. We don't really see snow or anything like that for winter, but it is kind of a cool colored tone to the color scheme. So that always kind of represents to me winter, with it being kind of cool toned. The blue kind of represents the cold. You kind of see the mountain. Yeah, that's mountain in the background. So it doesn't show snow on it, but it does seem kind of cold. To me, it seems cold. Does it seem cold to you? Maybe I'm just nuts. But to me, the blue theme kind of makes it represent winter. And night, because obviously it doesn't show tons of light. We've got just like the globe right here that has light, but it's not really daytime out other than this, like maybe this little piece right here that might be considered daylight. The sun glinting off of it, but mostly it's darker in tone, especially if we compare it to this. We've got all the light back here to where this one has very minimal light and it has an artificial light source. Okay, so we've got this dragon here, which obviously we've got dragons now in here. It's a blue dragon. Not sure totally what that means yet because we haven't read anything on whether blue means good or bad, or we're not sure. So we'll see about that and we'll discuss that at the end of the book, see if we know what that means afterward. So for my guess on who these characters are, okay, so my guess is that this is Tass, because he's the other person that's a short character. And though he's kneeling, you can tell that he's a short person. And he's got his top knot up here that they always mention. So I don't know what this orb is, or at least we don't at this point know what this orb is or what he's doing with it. But I believe this is Tass. This one, this looks like it's Laurana because she's got her elven ears here, if you can see those, and she's got the honey colored hair that's streaming out the back here. So we see that she is in this warrior garb, so we're going to see how that goes. We already saw the change in her a little bit in the fact that she did her first kill, and that kind of was a big thing for her. That's the thing that we saw the change in, is after that first kill. It was kind of liberating for her. So we're going to see how that goes. Maybe she is going to be joining the fight. Maybe she's... I don't know. I have not much to say about this, and I think we'll have to discuss it a bit later. But we've got Laurana, and up here, my guess would be Strum, because he's got the knight's armor and the giant sword that he's talked about having his dad's armor and his dad's sword. So that's my guess on that, would be Strum, and his mustache, which they do comment on his mustache in the last book, and how like the mustaches are like really important for the knights. So the compilation of these three characters, we're going to see how that goes in the book. I don't know. We don't know at this point why these characters are in succession. I do have a guess, or my already preconceived notions from actually reading it, but I'll go ahead and talk about that when we've actually all read it, and see if you come up with the same conclusion that I did by the end of the book of why these three people are on the cover. Okay, so I think that's about it for today's class. Thank you so much for joining me. Next week, for the next reading, is going to be obviously Dragons of Winter Night. We're going to read we've got another opening poem called The Song of the Nine Heroes. So we're going to go ahead and read from there, which is page 1, all the way through all the way through chapter 5. Just like we did the first book, we're going to do 5 chapters at a time, which will be pages 1 through 54. So about the same length as pages of chapters 1 through 5 of the first book. So go ahead and let's get started on this book for next time. And I really hope that you have enjoyed this book, the first one, and that you will enjoy the second one just as much. Go ahead, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns about today's class, anything that we talked about, or anything that you want to discuss with me, go ahead and leave it down below. And go ahead and like this video if you liked the first book, Dragons of Autumn Twilight. Alright, I will see you next video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.